Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I am Caitlin Gross, Training Coordinator at Sustainable Solutions Corporation. The focus of this webinar today is waste diversion and the path to zero waste. Our speakers will talk about how to reduce waste from your facility and avoid sending waste to landfill by implementing a comprehensive waste reduction program. Your continued improvement and success can be benchmarked and certified so you can credibly and effectively communicate your achievements. Now, let's get started because we have a lot of very good information to cover this hour. After completion of this course, you will receive one PDH or professional development hour towards your professional credentials. And a quick reminder, this presentation is copyrighted. The purpose of this course is to help you gain an understanding of how to eliminate waste, achieve waste diversion or zero waste goals, and effectively communicate waste diversion success. At the end of this presentation, you will be able to understand the changing consumer preferences, supply chain requirements, and emerging regulations. You'll also be able to reevaluate current business practices and implement more efficient strategies. And finally, identify opportunities to reduce waste generated from operations and to divert waste from landfills. We have two great presenters today. The first is Tad Radzinski, President of Sustainable Solutions Corporation and industry expert. With over 30 years of experience, he works with clients across a wide range of industries on corporate responsibility, sustainable buildings and operations services, and training. Formerly the Waste Minimization Program National Expert for the Environmental Protection Agency, Tad has been instrumental in developing and implementing waste minimization programs that have resulted in millions of dollars of savings, improved efficiency, and reduced waste. Our second presenter is Annie Bevan, Certification and Operations Manager at GreenCircle Certified. Annie is a certified sustainability manager and a lead green associate. She is responsible for supervising and ensuring the quality of all of GreenCircle's various sustainable product and operations validations. She is also a technical advisor to numerous national and international organizations who are establishing new standards to ensure integrity and transparency within the marketplace. As a reminder, today's webinar is being recorded and a link will be sent to everyone who registered. Tad and Annie will be happy to answer your questions towards the end of the webinar, so please send your questions through the questions pane in the side pane window at any time. And now, here's Tad.
Okay, I want to thank Caitlin for the introduction today, and very excited to be here and talk about waste diversion from landfill. I just wanted to give you some background about sustainable solutions before we roll into the webinar today. We have always focused on waste diversion with all the different services we provide. One area that we definitely get involved in is corporate sustainability, where we work with many manufacturers and other organizations to identify opportunities to improve the overall sustainability of these organizations. We also have a whole division that works on sustainable buildings and operations, and then a training and education arm, which is one reason we do these type of webinars on a routine basis. And like I said, one thing we always do is we really try to look at waste from every perspective in just about every project that we work on, and it is a very important aspect of any sustainability program. So why are we even talking about waste diversion? You know, why does it really matter? Well, I can tell you, having worked at the EPA for 10 years as the Waste Minimization National Expert, there's a huge amount of materials and waste that we generate on a daily basis, not only in our homes and in the way we operate our businesses, but just in manufacturing and agriculture. Just about everything we do creates waste. And if you think about it, our whole system is set up to be disposable. Most products that we use are designed for a very short life, and then usually end up going to landfill because they're not recyclable or recoverable at the end of life. So I really believe that waste diversion is very critical to any kind of an effective business strategy. If you really think about it, the amount of materials that do not go out in products actually results in lost profits and is a huge waste of resources and money. I also think that waste diversion is critical for any organization to, number one, move forward as a leader in corporate responsibility, but also as a major aspect of your business strategy. And this is something that we are seeing a lot of different organizations focus on. We're hearing a lot of claims in the marketplace, or diverting waste. And today on the webinar, we're definitely going to be talking about how you go about doing that and what some of these claims mean. If you think about it, we do manufacture a lot of products and we do offer a lot of services in this country. And I think Henry Ford said it really well: if it doesn't go out on the car, it is a waste. And that's definitely the approach that we take here in all the work we do. We basically treat anything that's not going out in a product or part of a service as waste and really a inefficiency in the operation. And we even look at not only waste materials that go into a dumpster or into a recycling stream or waste to energy, but we're also looking at waste energy or waste heat or waste water. All those different things are really important to consider when you're evaluating the sustainability of your organization and operations. And I've already said it: waste equals lost profit. Every time you throw something in a dumpster, you're losing money. And it really, having been in the EPA for a long time and still going into many manufacturing facilities, it's unbelievable to see how many folks just take it for granted that, oh, well, we've been generating this material forever and we just dispose of it. It's just the way we do business, when in reality you really got to change your thinking. I know there's even folks, if you think about it, sometimes raw materials they might pay 50 cents a pound, $5 a pound for whatever the raw material is, and they use some of it and then some of it they end up in a recycling stream and then they get 5 cents a pound. So really looking at how those materials move through your operation, the value of them, and that kind of thing is going to be really critical when you understand how to go about implementing waste diversion practices. So one thing that we're going to talk about now is just typical waste streams. And most of us, I think, sitting on this webinar today can picture the materials that we are throwing in our trash container at our desk, or maybe dragging down to the end of our street or dropping in the trash chute at our places that we live. But in reality, there's a lot of different materials that we have to think about when we're thinking about waste diversion. It's not only the solid and municipal waste, and that would be the standard trash that we dispose of from our homes and places of business, but we also have to think about things like electronic waste. We are in an age right now where electronic materials are really prevalent in our society, and with the changes in technology, it seems like people are always getting a new phone every year or every couple years, or the newest computer and that kind of thing. And I can tell you, many of those materials are not designed for recovery or recycling or reuse, and a huge amount of that goes to waste. Light bulbs, ballast, there are also other things we have to think about. Also construction and demolition waste. Every time we're renovating a building or building a new building, there's a huge amount of materials generated there. Packaging is always a tremendous waste. We always see many different pallets and cardboard boxes and other containers that are used once or used very briefly and then disposed of. Organic waste would be everything from food to landscaping materials. And then traditional recyclables: paper, plastics, cardboard, metals. I'm sure many people on this webinar have access to recycling. Believe it or not, there are areas in this country where there is very little recycling infrastructure, and it's very hard to actually even recycle the basics here. So you can't really take for granted the fact that you just have a place to put these materials and hope that they end up being recycled, because there still are a lot of areas where that is not fully possible. Another thing we have to think about is residual and hazardous waste. This is a very difficult area to focus on, because most of that waste is heavily regulated and there are limited opportunities on what you can do with it. And then things like pharmaceutical waste or personal care products, all kinds of different things, whether it's coming out of a manufacturing facility or it's product that expired on the shelf, or maybe it's just materials in your own home that you no longer use. How does that get managed? And one thing that's not really listed here, but we see always is, especially in big manufacturing facilities, there's usually materials that are stored on a shelf, whether it's chemicals or other products that have a shelf life. And once that shelf life expires, those materials become waste. And oftentimes those are disposed of. Sometimes they're landfilled, sometimes they're recycled. But that's a huge area for loss, especially for cost opportunities and expense reduction by minimizing that kind of thing. So again, a lot of materials to think about, and we need to think holistically here when we're talking zero waste to landfill, because you have to look at every material that comes into your facility and understand how those materials are utilized, managed, and how they end up as a waste at the end of life. What's really interesting, if we look at the growth of municipal solid waste generation in the United States, now this is only the first bullet that I talked about. This does not include electronics and everything else that was in that slide previously. And you can see here in yellow we've got municipal solid waste. This is actually the materials that go to landfill. And even though we're seeing a decline in there, we actually are still seeing a massive increase in the tons per year of, or million tons per year of waste generation in the United States. Right now we're generating about 251 million tons of municipal solid waste every year. And the good news is some of that material is going to recycling. We have been pretty effective at increasing recycling from about 16% nationwide up to about 34%, or in the 2000s here. But we still have a long way to go there. There's still many materials that are ending up in municipal solid waste that are recyclable. We also see an increase in materials that are going to waste to energy. And that is definitely an acceptable means of managing waste, because at least if you're going to dispose of something, you can at least get some fuel value out of it instead of putting it into a landfill and basically storing it in the earth for many, many years. Most people think that when you put something in a landfill that it does biodegrade and disappear, but that's not true. Our modern landfills are really designed as big storage vaults, really where there's very little degradation. And there's actually been excavations of landfills after 20 years, and the materials that are in there still look like they do when you basically dispose of them. Landfills also generate methane gas because of a lot of the organics that do break down under anaerobic conditions. And then we also have composting, which is really starting to increase as we get more infrastructure available for that. So I can tell you there's plenty of opportunity yet for both recycling and composting and just total source reduction, eliminating waste at the source, which can easily drive down the waste that we put in landfills, not only in our places of business, but in our own homes. So now let's talk a little bit about some market drivers for waste to landfill reductions and landfill-free claims, because we do see quite a few different organizations that are publicly stating that they are landfill-free. And these are just some of the folks that we see out there, folks like Unilever, General Motors, even the Philadelphia Eagles here in Pennsylvania are saying they're landfill-free. And many of you are probably familiar with the commercials you see from Subaru when they basically tout on TV that they're building their cars in a landfill-free facility. So I would think that many of these claims are most likely legitimate. However, there is no standards established in the United States right now, and if you think about it, that whole list we talked about earlier, there's a huge amount of materials and all kinds of different types of materials that must be evaluated. So again, we're going to continue to see folks making these claims, and I guess it's really good time to say, well, why do they make these claims? Why is this so important to them? Well, I can tell you that most people focus on waste because, number one, it's a very tangible aspect within an operation to focus on. The folks at Unilever and Subaru and General Motors and whatnot that are making these claims about being landfill free, they can say that because the average consumer out there totally understands that. You and I know that every week or every day we're throwing something in a container that is probably going to a landfill or maybe to recycling or whatever. So we can definitely, when we hear that somebody's landfill free, that's like, oh wow, no waste, that's pretty awesome. So people definitely think that, and the marketing folks definitely play upon that. But there are some major drivers, such as sustainability programs. Definitely cost savings is a huge opportunity. We already talked about that a little bit. And then also supply chain requirements, and we'll talk about that, where you have situations where, you know, maybe big purchasers like a Walmart or even a Google, or, you know, someone, or even a college campus is buying products and materials. In fact, we've even seen home builders that have really pushed back on suppliers to eliminate waste, where they're basically demanding from the folks they buy products from to reduce waste or eliminate it altogether. Another area that we see driving a focus on reducing waste is definitely regulations, and like I said, it's definitely easily understood. So let's think a little bit about Walmart. You know, it's a company that we're all familiar with. They have actually established their own personal goals at Walmart, or their own corporate goals, to end landfill waste by 2025. So their goal is to be zero waste to landfill by 2025, so they're giving themselves about 10 years to do that. And if any of you are familiar, back in 2010, Walmart actually sent out a supplier sustainability assessment to all 100,000 suppliers that are, you know, basically sending products and goods and services off to Walmart, and asked them various questions about their sustainability initiatives. So in 2010 and 11, this really raised awareness to many of these suppliers about sustainability in general, but also made them focus in on different things. For example, energy use, or water reduction, or social aspects, you know, as far as good working conditions and things like that. But material efficiency and reducing waste and enhancing quality were two of the major questions that were on that questionnaire. So this has definitely got people thinking. It's definitely forcing any suppliers then that work for Walmart to want to move forward here. We actually did work with a manufacturer of hardware products that was required by the home builder they were working with to either figure out a way to eliminate all the pallets and packaging that they were shipping to them, or they were going to find somebody else who would do that. So you can imagine that definitely got the attention of this company, because they were selling hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars worth of product every year to this particular large home builder. So they definitely jumped on that, and that's a big driver for folks when the supply chain is saying, hey, we really want you to do something here, we want you to pay attention to this. And we're going to continue to see this as more and more companies start to create sustainability questionnaires that are going out into the supply chain and that kind of thing. We did talk about cost saving quite a bit, and you know, one thing that I really want to do is really encourage everyone that's on the webinar today to really just think about this whole concept of waste in the first place. If we're doing something really efficiently and really sustainably, we should not even be generating any waste. I mean, that should be the ultimate goal. Let's not even generate waste. You know, forget this zero waste to landfill thing. Let's just not produce it in the first place. And like I said, in our society, it's not really that easy, because everything's designed and managed to be disposable. So heavy focus of mine ever since I've been at the EPA and in the work we do now is definitely using source reduction. And that's, let's not create the waste in the first place, and let's definitely enjoy the cost savings of that, because every raw material that's purchased and utilized within any facility or any operation costs money. And then when you actually do generate that waste, you have to dispose of it and pay the tipping fees. And you know, there's also a lot of other benefits of eliminating waste, which we're going to talk about shortly, that include, you know, basically greenhouse gas reductions and, you know, reduced labor and all kinds of other things that are really important. So there's many ways to save money by eliminating waste altogether, and that definitely should be the focus of everyone today as we talk about this. I mentioned legislation as a means of driving waste reductions, and e-waste, like I said, is on an exponential growth pattern here in the United States and many other developing countries. And if we look at it, you know, all the different cell phones, all the different electronics we deal with, not really designed for easy recycling or reuse. So what has happened is many states have passed legislation now mandating or requiring e-waste recycling. And that's great, you know, because we definitely want to recycle these materials and recover them. But in reality, what I'm hoping we're going to see in the future is regulations mandating that the manufacturers actually design these things for disassembly, reuse, recovery, and minimal waste generation, because even if we recycle a cell phone or a computer, I can tell you you're probably recovering maybe, if you're lucky, 10 to 50% of the materials in that. The rest is usually going to waste to energy or some type of other disposal that's not really being captured very well. We also have different things that happen around food waste. For example, Massachusetts, New York City, they're all looking at banning food waste. And we have seen things where construction and demolition waste has been basically banned in different areas. We've done a lot of work on Nantucket. It's really fun to work on an island because you don't have the land area that makes it really easy to dispose of things. So everything really gets scrutinized that's managed and utilized on an island these days. So that's a really good way to look at it. Another thing that has driven focus on waste minimization and waste diversion has been executive orders. This executive order 13514 was actually issued when President Obama first came into office. This has been superseded very recently. However, this has really created major changes within federal government. Having worked for EPA for 10 years, I saw how things were done there, and these goals that were established by this executive order, basically forcing or encouraging every agency in the federal government to achieve a 50% waste diversion rate by 2015, and also 50% construction and demolition waste diversion, as well as reduced paper use, composting and diversion of organics. So these executive orders do make big change because the government, all the different government buildings that are utilized and all the different government employees represents a large percentage of our population, as well as many, many different facilities and buildings. So again, all these different things are helping to drive this focus on waste diversion, and it's definitely something that we want to pay attention to as we not only work in our businesses, but like I said, every time you're in your own house, how can you be reducing or eliminating the materials you generate? So now let's just talk about some current standards for waste to landfill reductions and landfill-free claims. In the world we're in today, it's really great when you have a standard so everybody does things the same way. And I can tell you right now there's really no standards. We have a lot of companies out there claiming to be landfill-free or no zero waste to landfill, whatever the claim they're making, but there's no standard on how we measure and evaluate that that's really true. So there is some activity out there right now with ASTM and ANSI as far as working on different standards, but I do really think, and we're actually involved in a standards development process right now with ANSI, that there is a definite need for a national standard on this. If people are going to go out and make claims that they are landfill free, then we definitely want to see some type of a standard on how you measure things, how you report them, what materials are covered, what are acceptable means of diversion. There's a lot of different nuances here that you have to understand, and I definitely also think that it's really important that whatever standard is developed would require some type of third-party validation and certification, because there are a lot of organizations out there that basically self-certify, and that's okay, but really I think having a third party has extreme value, and I'm sure Annie's going to talk about that when she does her piece of this presentation. So ASTM International, the E60 group on sustainability, actually has a standard they've been working on to define waste from industrial facilities, and really that's important because that long list I showed earlier on in this presentation here was something that there's a lot of different materials that come out of manufacturing facilities. So think about an automobile manufacturer, all the stuff that comes out of there. There's going to be hazardous materials, there's going to be municipal solid waste, there's going to be, you name it, car parts, all kinds of different things. Same goes for a company that might make insulation or a company that's going to make door hardware. They're all going to have different waste streams that have to be dealt with. And I think it's very good that this ASTM committee is going to develop some kind of standard on defining what are typical waste generated and how they should be handled. This standard is actually coming back to life. It's been kind of in a parking lot for about a year now, but we've been heavily involved with this standards development panel on landfill waste diversion for manufacturing facilities and zero waste. And I'm hopeful that we're going to actually roll something out in the fairly near future here. There is a meeting coming up in June, where we're all going to reconvene on this and basically put our heads together and try to get something out there so there will be a standard that different organizations can follow. So the next thing we want to talk about today is material management strategies and different things you should do to institute a waste diversion program within your facility. It is really important that you focus on minimizing materials, and like I said previously, anything you can do to not generate waste in the first place, like eliminate the whole concept of waste, is going to be really important when you establish a waste diversion or landfill-free program within your facility. So this slide basically lists what we view as acceptable means of waste diversion, and it's really interesting. If you look at the graphic on here, the waste management hierarchy, you can see that source reduction and reuse is at the top, with treatment and disposal at the bottom. And then, as we move down, you can see it's most preferred to least preferred. And the unfortunate thing is that in reality, in the way we manage waste in the United States today, essentially treatment and disposal is at the very top, where the majority of materials actually go to disposal in landfills, and source reduction would actually be the smallest part of the pyramid here, because we are a disposable society and most people don't think about ways they can eliminate waste or the whole concept of waste to begin with. So when we think about these acceptable means of diversion, obviously source reduction, recycling, looking at materials returned to the supplier, reuse in the same or different process, redesigning products and materials to eliminate waste. That's a really important one. We're going to talk in a few minutes about sustainable product innovation and how you can basically design waste out in the new product development process. Processing and selling to a third party, anaerobic digestion with energy recovery. And what we mean by this is typically this is going to be organic materials, sludges, different things like that, that can be managed in an anaerobic digester and then produce methane that can then be used for basically generating electricity or other things. And this is not a landfill situation where it's anaerobic digestion from a landfill and then energy recovery from that. And then waste to energy, if you notice here, we talk about non-recyclable and not economically recoverable materials. And this is really important because, waste to energy or energy from waste should not be a way you achieve the majority of your waste diversion. Basically, there's a lot of materials that need to be separated out, and we do fully agree that waste to energy is a very important aspect in managing materials and important for successful landfill-free programs, but that should not include materials that have the ability to be recycled or can be recovered and reused in other means. So this is an interesting question when we talk about hazardous and other wastes. How are these wastes managed? How are they going to be accounted for in landfill-free claims? And these are usually very complex waste materials that are heavily regulated by either EPA or state regulations. Most wastes are listed and they're going to have specific requirements on how they are managed. But what I show here is just two examples of how Procter & Gamble and Unilever were able to illustrate on their websites transparently about how they were reporting in their landfill-free claims hazardous waste. And in this particular case, Unilever fully lays out that they are reporting hazardous and non-hazardous separately, and they are not actually accounting for the hazardous in their landfill-free claim. Whereas Procter & Gamble is definitely addressing hazardous materials as well, and there are one or two cutoff rules that they have that they utilize here. But again, just like we said earlier in the webinar here, you really have to think about every material in your facility and how you're going to manage that. So if you're interested in setting up a landfill-free or waste diversion program within your operation, these are the very key steps on doing it, and we're going to talk about them in upcoming slides here. But definitely understanding material flows and waste characterization is really a critical thing. You need to understand how materials come into your facility, how they're managed, how they become a waste in the first place, and then how they are handled after they become a waste. Definitely focusing in on source reduction and reuse of materials as much as possible, eliminating the concept of waste altogether. education and behavior change. I can tell you, you can develop and design the best program in the world, but if you're not educating all the people in your operation or your facility on what they need to be doing as far as handling or even minimizing the generation of waste, it's going to be basically a waste of time. So the education and behavior piece is going to be very critical. And then we always recommend ongoing measurement and benchmarking of waste materials. And it's a common thing that it's not an easy thing to track, because most of the waste management companies and waste haulers do not actually weigh everything that's leaving your facility. So that's going to be a major part of what you establish as far as your overall program goes, on how you're going to measure and benchmark these materials coming in and out of the facility. And then last but not least is going to be marketing and certification. It's extremely important to tell the world about the good things you're doing in an effective manner. That's why folks like Subaru and Procter & Gamble and others that are publicly advertising that they're landfill free do it, because they want the world to know that they're doing really good work, and that is something that most average people can understand. And then certification is really a very important aspect, and not only is it add credibility to the claim, but it also oftentimes identifies additional opportunities for continuous improvement or further reduction in waste materials. So here's an example of how we evaluate material flows within a facility. We typically will generate and produce a material flow diagram or a process flow diagram, and then really understand what's coming in, how it's moving around the facility, where it's ending up becoming a waste. And this becomes a very useful tool, not only for our waste diversion activities and waste minimization activities, but then even for like Lean and Six Sigma projects, having this information is really valuable. And it really makes you ask the question, what kind of materials do we have? How are we using them in the process? Where are we generating scrap or waste in the process? And then what's really ending up in our dumpsters? And that's where you really need to dive in and do what we call waste characterization. And that means basically doing a dumpster dive, going in and either intercepting the materials before they end up in the dumpster or the container, and separating them and weighing them to determine, what is recyclable, easily recyclable, and what's being commingled in here. What materials can we recycle or eliminate from use altogether? Oftentimes we found opportunities by seeing materials that are ending up in a waste stream and knowing that there might be a company that is willing to accept those materials and that kind of thing. So doing this dumpster dive or waste characterization really opens up opportunities for maybe some of your more challenging waste. If you remember, I said it's pretty easy to reduce the first 80% of waste, but once you get to that last 20%, that's when you really get in the struggle. And that's where this characterization process is really helpful. Very important to also do this for your hazardous and residual waste that aren't, captured in the municipal waste or recycling stream. And we've had some huge success with that, really taking a hard look at the materials that are being drummed up for disposal. Oftentimes you're having situations where people are mixing things or disposing of recyclable containers just because they're not sure if it is hazardous. And usually these hazardous wastes are very expensive materials to manage. Also going to be important to get a, know the specific time frame that the materials came from, so you can do your calculations. For example, if you're intercepting materials from one shift, you want to know that, or if it's a whole day's worth, or in some cases when we're building up hazardous and residual, we'll get the facility to stockpile it for a week or two so we can see how many drums are actually being generated, and then we can actually, really understand where the opportunities are in these individual materials. And then based on all this information, you basically create a pie chart and you identify what percentages should be diverted from the landfill stream. We talked a lot about source reduction and reuse. This was a main focus of mine when I worked at the EPA, and I really think that preventing waste at the source is definitely a way to go here. I've had so many situations where I go into manufacturing facilities and you basically see product running down a line, and it's going down a conveyor belt, and some of it's spilling off the conveyor belt, and it just falls on the floor and suddenly becomes useless material. And all it would take is maybe adding a guard or a machine guard that's going to prevent the material from spilling, or just a different way of handling materials, and that's why I give this example here of using different bins to catch spills for material unloading, or even if you have a situation where you can't prevent some things from coming off a conveyor belt, you at least catch them so you can return them to the process. Also, finding potential users for other waste materials, very important. For example, asphalt roofing shingles can actually be ground up and integrated into asphalt pavement, which is used to make roads. And then highly recommend finding and interviewing various waste handlers and management companies to determine who's going to give you the best value, really help you achieve your goals, and help you manage materials in an effective manner. Talked earlier about education and behavior change. You can, like I said, you can do all the best procedures in the world, and this is where it's really important to explain to people how they're supposed to handle materials, how they should not be generating them in the first place, educating any changes in handling processes or procedures, integrating clear signage and directions, and even posting the procedures in the areas where the waste or materials are being handled and generated. Very important. And this should happen at the level of basically educating everybody in the organization who is coming into contact with waste materials. And if you think about it, that's essentially going to be everybody, because even you or I sitting at our office desk are most likely going to be creating some type of materials that have to be either recycled or disposed of from our lunch or whatever. So getting everybody in the organization up to speed on how to handle materials is going to be really important. I just wanted to give a quick discussion here, since we're talking about changing the system and really eliminating the whole concept of waste to begin with. That's where we start to think about things like extended producer responsibility, which means that the manufacturer is, in their new product development process, designing these various products to be recycled, reused, disassembled, easily recovering materials at the end of life, or actually set up to be taken back and recycled back into themselves, creating a circular economy program, which I think is definitely the direction we have to really go. I did a TEDx talk on this, and I definitely think if we're going to be a sustainable society, a sustainable world, we got to really change the way we manage and handle products and materials, because right now we are the disposable society, and we all know that there is really no way on the planet. Next thing that we want to look at is how these materials come back. This is a great illustration of what a circular economy could look like, where the product at the end of life is basically filtering back to the manufacturer or coming out of installation or consumer use, and recovering those materials because they've been designed for recycling, reuse, or disassembly, and that the infrastructure exists to get those materials back and recover them. We talked a lot about electronics earlier on, and there's just so many electronic materials and products. I mean, you can't even keep up with the technology changes, and the majority of those materials rarely get recycled, so or even recovered. So the more we can do when we're designing these programs and these products right at the manufacturing stage is going to be really important. And the last phase here is marketing and certification. Like I said, if you're doing great things, you definitely want to tell the world about it. That's why I think we have so many large companies and other organizations making landfill-free or zero waste to landfill claims. And I really do think that it's imperative that if somebody's going to be making these claims, they do have a third-party certification to verify that what they're doing is true and accurate, especially in light of the fact that there is not a national standard at this point for people to follow. I do think this is going to be really important, and in a few minutes here you'll hear from Annie, who's going to talk about some of the successes they've had in their audits, where not only are they verifying the amount of material, but they're finding problems with how materials are handled downstream, or they're finding out that things aren't really being recycled the way they should be, and usually making observations that can help drive the program and really improve it. And when you are getting validated and audited, you definitely want to be working with a company that's going to verify your claim and really take a hard look at the facility and your operation. If someone's going to certify you and never leave their office, that's not a good thing. Anybody that will certify you should be coming out to your plant, walking it down, and then also they should be following the materials and going downstream to take a look at what's happening in the waste management companies and how those materials are being managed. And that's a great way to understand if the company that takes them, if they're really handling them the way they say they are. And we've seen a lot of instances where that doesn't really happen. So one other thing that drives the importance of getting third-party certification is also some protection for you, the organization that makes the claim. The Federal Trade Commission issued their Green Guides in 2012 that are updated, and there was an earmark by Congress because of so much greenwashing going on in the marketplace for the Federal Trade Commission to start to really enforce the Green Guides. And we're seeing a huge enforcement campaign going on now where the Federal Trade Commission is out there verifying that claims that are being made are true, and they have fined various organizations for misleading or greenwashing claims. Amazon, Macy's, and Sears were basically fined for mislabeling some clothing products that they said were made with bamboo that were actually made with rayon, and I think each of these companies was fined about $1.2 million apiece for making false claims about their products. And the same thing could be true for you if you are making claims about being landfill free. That's another strong value of having a third-party audit that and make sure that what you're saying is true and accurate, and your downstream suppliers are really handling the materials from there. So with that, I'm going to bring on Annie Bevan now and let her talk about the different things that GreenCircle is doing and how they've been able to effectively handle the various certifications they're doing and some of the benefits of these certs. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Annie. Annie, good to have you here, and looking forward to hearing you talk about what GreenCircle's work is doing these days.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Tad. As always, it's great to be here today. I am Annie Bevan, the Certification and Operations Manager for GreenCircle Certified, and GreenCircle is a third-party certification organization that validates sustainability claims in products and operations. And I was thinking about how to prepare for this webinar, and Tad kind of already beat me to saying this, but it's a funny thing. I've been working in sustainability for a little over 6 years now, and I've truly seen a huge transition take place regarding the topic of waste. And specifically at GreenCircle, conversations have gone from little to no questions about waste diversion to now waste diversion from landfill certification being one of our most popular certifications and asked about certifications. And I think the reason this is occurring is because everyone, consumers, scientists, architects, all can understand what a claim surrounding waste diversion from landfill means. And one knows that if a company isn't filling up what little space we have left in our landfills, that they're doing something beneficial for the environment. And in addition to this, from the manufacturer's end, there is a significant cost savings that can occur when a company starts to realize, wow, I can get paid for recycling this material rather than paying someone to haul this material and throw it away. And there are many benefits in obtaining GreenCircle waste diversion from landfill certification, and today I'm going to take you through our certification process, go over some of our definitions, and as Tad mentioned, there is no current national standard on how to define waste diversion from landfills, so I'm going to go through GreenCircle's waste diversion from landfill guidelines, and I'm also going to review with you a few highlights from our customers and how a GreenCircle waste diversion from landfill audit has benefited them and how they've improved their programs moving forward. And since its start, GreenCircle has certified and audited over 1,000 products and operations claims. That number is growing daily. These are just some of the customers we continue to work with to provide third-party certification and auditing services, and I'm going to talk about a few of these later in the webinar today. And like I mentioned before, GreenCircle conducts our waste diversion from landfill certification in accordance to our waste diversion from landfill guidelines. And these guidelines seek to realistically define how to make waste diversion from landfill claims, but also still drive continuous improvement. And within these guidelines, we do define our boundary for analysis, which is one step downstream from the facility in which the waste has left. So as an organization, you should not be thinking, okay, well, this waste just now left my gate. It's no longer my responsibility. The generator of this waste should be responsible in understanding what is happening to this material after it leaves its site, which is why GreenCircle audits the downstream material management organizations of the organization we're verifying to verify what they're doing with the material and validate that they are diverting material as they say. And I'm going to discuss our certification process in a bit more detail in the coming slides. So the objective of GreenCircle's waste diversion from landfill certification is to audit and validate that an organization's waste is being diverted from landfill through various acceptable means of diversion. And you can see these means of diversion on the slide, and I know Tad went over them a little earlier, and they're very similar. And acceptable means of diversion range anywhere from recycling to composting and to even internal source reduction practices that are being measured and are quantifiable. And just something to note, in the current infrastructure within the United States, depending where your facility is, there could be limited options to divert materials from landfill. I know Tad said this before, but some people don't even have curbside recycling available, which is crazy to think about. And that being said, GreenCircle does find waste energy as an acceptable means of diversion. However, this material must be non-recyclable or not economically recoverable. And this means that there is no other form of diversion for the material going to waste energy in the nearby infrastructure, or that the cost to divert this material by other means is too expensive and just not economically feasible. And to briefly summarize our process before I get into some case studies, after the proposal is signed, GreenCircle has an initial data collection phase where we look to collect data from the organizations to quantifiably document outgoing waste streams and who is managing that material. We have initial data collection templates to help streamline the data collection process to try and eliminate the time it takes for the internal personnel to work on this project as well. We try and be very mindful of the time spent. And after we collect the data, we do require a site visit for all of our certifications. And as an outside party with extensive manufacturing experience, we can come in with an outside perspective and really observe your waste management and diversion practices internally. And it's through the site visit where we validate where the waste is being generated and also how waste is being managed on site. We do generate observations for improvement from the site visit to include in our final auditing report, and we are not consultants. I just want to be clear on that. So we cannot provide you advice on how to improve, but we can highlight areas of potential improvement, which you will hear in my coming case studies on how this has been very beneficial to some of our current clients. And in addition to a site visit to the facility, GreenCircle also conducts a site visit to the nearby downstream material management organizations to validate their processes and understand any residuals coming off their process. So in addition to this, we do perform a material management comparison to verify the numbers the material management organization is saying they're getting as compared to what the organization we're certifying is saying they're sending. And this very recently has proved very valuable. Company we just recently certified found out that a downstream material management organization was actually, I don't want to say ripping them off, but saying they were getting a lot more than what they were actually sending. So that was a big value to them that we did the comparison. Hopefully it will save them money down in the long term. So finally, after the site visit phase is finalized, we complete our final calculations validating the percentage of waste a company is diverting from landfill. And upon finalizing this percentage, we provide marks and certificates to the certified organizations for use in marketing and on packaging of your products. And you can see the two marks we offer on the screen here. We do offer zero waste to landfill certification, but I must say no one has yet to achieve that claim after being audited by us. And GreenCircle also provides joint marketing support. This is something we really pride ourselves on after finalizing certification. And this joint marketing support can include joint press releases, announcements in our newsletters, and we really want our clients to get a lot of recognition for their achievements in sustainability. So that's really something we focus on and take pride in after certification is complete. And as mentioned previously, we also have a final audit report summarizing our methods of certification, and as well as provide observations for improvement within that final audit report. And then finally, there is a yearly recertification process to ensure the integrity of your claims on a yearly basis. Now to get into a few case studies before I hand the presentation back over to Tad for final comments. GAF, one of our clients, is the largest roofing products manufacturer in North America, and GreenCircle has now certified 2 of their asphalt shingle facilities in Myerstown, Pennsylvania and Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And GF's doing a great job as a corporation, not only obtaining third-party validation for their waste diversion from landfill claims, but taking our audits and and improving their processes based on our observations of improvement. We just actually completed our certification and audit of the Tuscaloosa facility about a month ago, and we just had a follow-up call with the facility, and they have already implemented a training program to reduce commingling at the facility, which I thought was really impressive that they made changes so quickly. And like I mentioned, we have now certified 2 GAF roofing shingle facilities, and after completing the waste diversion from landfill certification, GAF was able to compare best practices and areas of improvement between their 2 facilities. And examples of some of this is including foam wedges, some packaging material is being diverted at one facility but not another. They're using the same material, but one facility has found an outlet, the other one hasn't. And also, one facility, cardboard packaging isn't even being used, but is being used to the other. So there's an opportunity for one facility to improve their reduction of source reduction as well. So the certification provided a means of documenting the different waste streams are being diverted at each facility, which I think is going to help increase diversion rates throughout the organization, which I think is the overall goal. Another organization who's done a great job in the realm of waste is Merck Pharmaceuticals. And being one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world, they live in an industry that's heavily regulated. So they have some challenges associated with diverting waste, as they are required to incinerate a lot of materials by law. And GreenCircle has now certified 3 Merck facilities in Pennsylvania, and we're currently in process of recertifying these facilities, and I'm really excited to see how they've improved their processes since our last certification. But in our certification, as a part of our process, GreenCircle conducted a report out meeting at the end of the projects. And this actually allowed personnel from all 3 sites to get together and discuss waste procedures, various training needed, and also identify various areas of needed improvement of both within for Merck personnel, as well as their janitorial service in charge of putting waste into various bins around the campuses. And after completing the waste diversion from landfill certification, the Merck team was able to have a discussion with their janitorial staff to discuss the audit findings and brainstorm ideas on how to increase diversion rates. And also, as I mentioned before, Merck being a pharmaceutical company and it's mandated by law to dispose of materials in certain ways, after completing our audit, they recognized that their waste matrix that identifies various materials disposal, how you're supposed to dispose of certain materials, was actually able to be updated, which would have materials that were previously going to incineration can now be recycled. So that was another benefit of certification. And I do have to say, one thing Merck did do after obtaining GreenCircle certification is that they did decide to do a deeper dive at some of the buildings on their site. And GreenCircle identified various problem areas, and then Merck hired a consultant to perform a full waste categorization to improve these problem buildings moving forward. And this was very successful, and they were able to document hundreds of thousands of dollars of savings by conducting these various waste characterizations after the GreenCircle audit. So that was definitely beneficial to them. And finally, Superior Essex is a global leader in wire and cable products, and I love their tagline, but their tagline is everywhere you live and work. And this product is a product that is most likely in every one of your buildings you're currently sitting in, however you just don't see it because it's behind the walls or in the ceiling. And one of the benefits of GreenCircle Waste Diversion from Landfill certification I think is that we do require site visits to visually observe internal processes and make observations for improvements, and it helps in terms of continuous improvement as well. And I actually personally performed the Superior Essex Waste Diversion on-site audit, and I went to their facility and was incredibly impressed at how organized their internal systems were and how they clearly had plant personnel buy-in in what material should go in what bin, or if a material should be recycled or not. And to achieve high waste diversion from landfill numbers, an organization must properly train their employees and get their buy-in to ensure commingling doesn't occur, and Superior Essex was doing a really good job at their hoising facility with that. And previous to the completion of the certification, Superior Essex was actually touting a 98% diversion rate, which GreenCircle did confirm they did have, but this was at the facility only and not counting after the materials had left their plant. So after GreenCircle conducted our downstream material management review, we found that various material management organizations were actually not diverting material as previously understood. So Superior Essex is actually an amazing case study of a corporation who took some very disappointing news, realizing they weren't as high of a diversion as they previously thought, but began making some changes and worked with their downstream material management organizations and used our audit as a baseline for improvement. And we are actually about to begin our recertification with them, and I'm really excited to see where their diversion percentage is. It was really impressive to see how they took our observations to heart and began immediately working to get to zero waste to landfill. So I'm excited to finalize that recertification. So throughout my presentation today, I've discussed the benefit of certification, but I thought I'd just recap quickly before I hand the mic back over to Tad. And in addition to third-party validation of your claims, GreenCircle's audits of your facility and downstream material management organizations can identify areas of improvement to further improve your waste diversion from landfill programs. And this will ensure your material management organizations are diverting materials as they say, and also ensure your internal program is efficient as well. And our report out meeting at the end of the project has been very beneficial to all organizations we have certified. And as I mentioned in the case studies, in the past slides, this is a means to foster conversations to move things forward within an organization, which is a huge part of improving any program. And additionally, GreenCircle will help promote your achievements with joint marketing efforts, and something, again, we really take pride in. And we do have a newsletter that goes out to over 7,000 contacts to help spread the word. And we will also review your marketing materials to ensure you're stating your claims correctly. And it's not only about having a waste diversion program, but being able to market this will bring you brand recognition and display how you are incorporating sustainability into additional aspects in your corporation. So with that, I wanted to thank you very much for your time today, and it looks like we have a lot of great questions coming in that I'm looking forward to answering. But in the meantime, I'm going to hand the mic back to Tad for some closing thoughts, and thank you very much. I look forward to future conversations with all of you.
So thank you, Annie. I really appreciate your presentation there. There were some great ideas and really great case studies on how you've been able to help different organizations not only audit and verify their claims, but to identify additional opportunities for improvement. And we definitely can see that third-party auditing is really valuable, and not only gives you proof that your claim is accurate, but has actually driven some more significant improvements and cost savings for various organizations. So just want to come back to the fact that, when we're thinking about waste diversion from landfill and landfill free, it's not just the cost savings that we talked about on as far as the disposal goes. There's also cost savings from materials that you're not wasting in the first place. But then you also got to remember that when you're doing an effective waste diversion program and a waste minimization program, you're going to have cost savings from people that are handling materials and having to process those or move them to dumpsters and different things like that. You're going to be reducing that cost significantly. And then for those of you on the webinar that are generating hazardous waste or residual waste that require special handling and regulation and paperwork, reducing that material is going to result in significant time savings, but it's also going to reduce in your risk of getting fined by the EPA or the state or some other organization that's going to be enforcing those regulations. And that can have a huge cost, not only in a dollars sense, but also some bad press or effect on your brand if you were to get in trouble. Another thing to remember is if you are reducing waste and going landfill free, especially if you have used source reduction effectively, you're going to be reducing fossil fuel consumption and greenhouse gas emissions from transportation of these materials to the landfill or to the recycling facility or waste energy facility, as well as if you're a large campus moving those materials around your site, which means increased traffic on your site, which is a safety issue. The more you can reduce traffic on the site is beneficial, and it does reduce your carbon footprint right on your facility. And then oftentimes we see many manufacturing facilities are really crammed for space. There's not a lot of room, so reducing waste also increases space in your facility. Maybe it's on your loading dock or maybe it's where you store the materials, but it's definitely going to give you the ability to open up some space for additional room to actually make the products you want to get out the door or to do whatever service you're providing. So in summary, I think it's really important that you understand your material flows and remember that waste definitely is lost profit because you're losing materials that should really be going out with your product or service. Really important to remember source reduction is the first step. Let's eliminate the concept of waste altogether. And then third-party validation. We've heard about the benefits from Annie's presentation. We know for a fact that there are going to be people out there that are going to scrutinize your claim and question it, so having that third-party validation gives it credibility but also protects you from maybe Federal Trade Commission and will most likely, if done right, identify additional opportunities for you to enhance, improve, and even save some money in your operation. And last but not least, education and training are critical. So if you're going to have an effective program, you definitely need to plan on a training for all involved to understand how they should be handling materials and understanding the waste diversion goals for the facility and your operations. So I definitely think we covered the learning objectives we set forward in the beginning of this, and as we do recall, this webinar will provide PDH credits for anybody that has a professional engineering license or requires continuing education. If any of you that are listening to this recording have any specific questions, you should email us. Here are our email addresses. You can either email me or Annie, and we can definitely get back to you and provide the information you need, or we'd be glad to set up a call to talk to you about how to go about moving forward with your waste minimization program or your waste diversion from landfill, zero waste to landfill program, and we can definitely help you out with that. We also have the ability to bring any kind of training you want to your organization. We routinely do that, and we'd be glad to do that for you. So definitely reach out, and we'll help you out and really help move the ball forward as far as moving to the next level of hitting those zero waste to landfill goals. Our next webinar is going to be called Supply Chain Optimization, Sustaining Success in a Resource-Constrained World, and I'll be doing that presentation on May 5th. And if you're interested in signing up for that, you can register right here. It's going to be a really interesting discussion on how we work in the supply chain to drive sustainability to our suppliers, both up and downstream, and to really make change to meet these large goals that we have of creating a circular economy, becoming zero waste to landfill, all kinds of different things that we want to do. And I do think that this webinar will provide an extreme amount of value if you're interested, or if you're, you are an organization that works with suppliers or is a supplier to some other company. This will be a really great webinar. So hopefully to see you on May 5th at 2 o'clock, and the registration information is here. So I want to thank everybody for joining today, and we appreciate your time, and feel free to reach out to us in any way, either email or a phone call, to get the information you need to take your program up to the next level. Thank you.